They say the new or the nude Chiefs pre- and post-game radio host.
Either way, my friend Paul, whose parents are going to the Ryder Cup, he always wanted me to call it Nude Radio 980 KMBZ back in the day when we were younger and do all the shows naked. I was like, I'm in. I have no problem doing that.
Nude or no nude, it is Josh Brisco joining us now on the show. What a hell of an introduction that is, Brisco. Let's dive right into it. Some say a win's a win, but how you feeling about this team 3 weeks into the season?
Okay, sorry. I was just
trying
to meet you guys' standards. I wasn't before the segment started, but I thought, you know what? I'm at home. Nobody can see me right now. Let's go ahead and do this thing with the level of energy that is required. I feel amazing now. Suddenly, I feel the breeze on my skin.
Man.
I really will take it, guys. I mean, the idea of a win over the Giants in Week 3 feeling like a season-saving moment was not on my bingo card, but they had to win, right? Like, the method matters, the process matters, but in this case, the result mattered 10 times more. So all of the things that we will talk about here over the next 15 minutes or whatever, all of that will be through the lens of there are a lot of places where things can still get better. I am kind of lukewarm on where the offense stands right now, although I think you guys just talked about a couple good canaries in the coal mine. Is that an option? I'm not sure.
100%.
I think that there is good stuff to build upon, but none of the little details that we're going to kick around now would have mattered if they would have lost, because It just would have been, okay, well, they're 0-3, and then they're going to be 0-4, and then maybe they can be 1-5, and then they're going to be 1-6, and now there's a little bit of gas in the tank, which was very much needed.
Yeah, no question. They needed that win, and winning begats winning, right? You take a win and you feel good about yourself. You're like, all right, we got a victory. We know we can do it. We beat a bad team. That's the most important thing. And then you watch the Ravens last night and you went, damn, that defense can't stop anybody in Baltimore right now. Maybe this is a weekend where we can get our offense healthy.
Isn't it amazing, by the way, with the way that the vibes have gone for this Chiefs team opposite that Ravens team, where now, with it all being said and done, they're going to meet at Arrowhead as a pair of 1 and 2 teams that both lost to 2 good teams and beat a pretty bad one. And now the Ravens beat the Browns in Week 2. Right. They just beat the Packers. Football's weird. You're always going to have those fine margins. The Giants look pretty good against the Cowboys, and then maybe the Cowboys just stink. But that really is why I know we all kind of roll our eyes at some point every time Andy Reid says, well, you know, it's hard to get a win in this league. And we all think about the Panthers game last year as a win that felt like a loss. There is truth to that, though. Like our mutual friend Nate Taylor always says, real football doesn't start till Thanksgiving. That's only true if you're winning games in September and October, when you can afford to look ahead to Thanksgiving for when the real stuff really starts. So again, I am heartened by the victory.
Yeah, no, I am too, and I'm the guy who said years ago the regular season doesn't matter, and I still stand by that. When you're the Chiefs, the goal is to, what you do in January and February is how you get your season determined, but you got to get there. And Sunday was a good step into kind of righting this ship and getting there and just kind of treading water. I hear that from a lot of people, Josh, both inside the organization and around the NFL. They're like, if the Chiefs can just tread water for these first 6 games and they get these wide receivers back, it's going to open everything else up. I agree with that, but we also need more out of our offensive line, and I'm talking about Creed and Trey more than anybody. Jawan Taylor's now low-hanging fruit. 71's one of the best tackles in the game right now, and the offensive line still isn't good. Trey and Creed
Junior.
Trey and Creed need to raise their level of play now.
I think calling that duo Treed is actually kind of a good idea.
Treed?
Can you take me lower?
Like that, yeah, they're gonna be here for a while.
Yeah.
And I think that's reasonable, and the offensive line is a 5-man operation, right? Like, it really does depend on the guys playing around you. But even with Jawan Taylor being a penalty machine, he had a really bad rep on 3rd down on Sunday that we all saw. Even then, some of his underlying numbers, removing the penalties, have been pretty good.
Right.
So I'm a little bit caught there on Jawan Taylor.
So am I.
Because the penalty thing is just either inexcusable or undeniable, at least at this point, that you go, man, that's a part of his game right right now. But you do need to continue to see the offensive line, and especially those two on the interior that you have paid the money to, that you do have as leaders on that O-line, and guys that have the right mindset. I mean, the Chiefs paid those guys because they believe they're the right type of football players and the right type of guys to give that money to. And I tend to agree, especially Creed's just a great value because centers are kind of undervalued at this point. But the depth and width of the pocket has to give Mahomes a little more space to step into some of these throws. And then I know that there have been problems in the running back room, and Isaiah Pacheco had a couple of really rough reps that, again, I don't need to tell you any more about. You know what I'm talking about. He was running the wrong direction when Patrick Mahomes threw him the football.
Right.
We've got to see a little bit more advantage taken of some of those creases by the running back room. I think that whole operation has a lot of room to improve.
I think you and I are probably pretty similar last night watching Baltimore versus Detroit, thinking every time that Baltimore is on the field, knowing that that's your next opponent. Obviously, Detroit, you've got a couple of weeks till they come to town. But watching Baltimore, knowing that's your next opponent, going, okay, where would the Chiefs kind of, stack up to this sort of drive? Where do the Chiefs look at this? Derrick Henry looks like he's got the yips with holding onto the football. Lamar Jackson was sacked 7 times because they spied somebody. You kind of put yourself in that situation like I did last night where, okay, who's the spy guy? Is this a Leo Chanel game? Is this a Drew Tranquil game? Like, who's going to be that guy? Now, obviously, Detroit's defensive line, much better than the Kansas City Chiefs. But what say you, Brisco, when you watched that game last night with Baltimore on the field showing that Lamar can be sacked more than a handful of times?
Yeah, you hit on the main things that a couple of times I had the thought of, like, all right, Leo, I hope I hope your knees are feeling good. I hope your ankles are feeling limber. You've got a very tough matchup coming up, but I do think it makes a lot of sense for him to get some of that spy responsibility. And you can never do it all the time because you can never let the opposing quarterback know what you're going to do every time. That's the chess match of this incredible sport. But the other thing that you also mentioned, the Lions' defensive line and pass rush, the 4-man rush has obviously been much more productive. They've got one superstar on the edge.
Oh, he's good.
The Chief superstars on the interior, and watching Hutchinson and thinking about George Karlaftis just in terms of, like, who's your best defensive end here and what can they do was at times kind of frustrating. It's like, man, just imagine Karlaftis with that little bit of extra juice that takes it from a good to a great pass rusher. But the other thing that the Lions did with really remarkable consistency, they were maintaining their rush lanes and whatever their gap responsibilities were, which I think is why you saw them so successfully kind of corralling Lamar Jackson and then bringing him down. Even then, I think this is off the back of a napkin here, but I think 3 of those sacks, maybe a couple of very short gains, were all brought down because of a shoestring tackle on Lamar Jackson. So you have all of these guys doing their job. You maintain that rush integrity. You're corralling the most escapable quarterback in football, and then still you got to grab him by a fingernail sometimes to bring him down by a shoelace. That's what it took for the Lions to have that kind of performance, and still it ends up being a very close, high-scoring, back-and-forth game. But I really do think that's the standard now for the Chiefs. You've got to figure out how to pressure him relatively quickly and then not give him any space to escape. That's way easier said than done, but it is heartening that the Lions were able to do it.
No doubt, especially, with them coming in here, and you can get healthy from an offensive standpoint against their defense, and maybe from a defensive standpoint, you can, hold them down. If you hold Lamar down, you're feeling really good about yourself. I just hope it doesn't come down to a field goal. Where are you on Butker right now?
I mean, you've got to be some level of concern.
I am, yeah. I'm very concerned, man. He should have had 5 misses if he doesn't hit the upright. And we're only in 3 games.
I think you can still have some of the, like, if you said Harrison Butker's trotting out for a 58-yarder at the end of the game, I'm going to bet that he makes it, but you can't have that kind of inconsistency throughout a game that changes how you play. Early misses are not as instantly impactful as late misses, but it changes the number of possessions you need to tie up the game later, whatever it may be. So right now, I think it's fair to say that Butker is frankly, a kicker. That is kind of the standing that he's in right now. He's kind of in the muck of a guy that has crazy range. He's had obviously incredibly clutch moments. His consistency levels with this team have been remarkable. I don't know how much this is playing into it, but he talked about trying not to collapse down to that knee this year, and then you still see him do it when he's trying to make some of those longer kicks and get a little more power. And look, I've heard him and Dave Tobe talk about it a lot, and I pay attention, but even then, I'm not naive enough to tell you I got all the mechanics of kicking down as well as Harrison Butker and Dave Tobe do. But I do think that you have plenty of signs right now where you can't be 100% confident in Butker like you have been before. weirdly kind of in that mid-range, and then even some of those shorter, long kicks, if that makes sense. Again, I think there's 3 seconds left on the clock, and it's Butker for 60. I think there's a really, really, really good chance he's making that kick. But that is an uncertainty that I do not like having with my kicker.
Yeah, and I think you make great points by talking about the early in the game, kicks that matter so much, because both of those games could have been easily won if Harrison Butker makes his field goals and extra points.
Yep. Yeah, and that's something where we remember the mistakes of a missed tackle or an interception or a lost sack or whatever. But I do think because it's the kicking game, I think we have an inclination to go, all right, well, there's one to make up. And then all of a sudden you're chasing 2-point conversions to try to get the math even. And now it should have been a tie game, and now it's a 4-point game.
Exactly.
It should have been a touchdown. Now it's 8. Now it's 11. And that's a way to lose control of a game. You can't give up the points that you're counting up before the snap. If it's a missed 65-yarder that goes off the crossbar, we all know what kind of math we're working with there. But Butker's got to be as good as he's been previously. They paid him a lot of money. He's got a pretty big cap number. He's going to be on this team for a little while at least. And I'm not saying that it's over. I'm here to cut bait, but it's just this is a long-term thing that needs to be fixed as much as it's a short-term thing.
Brisco, we appreciate the time, and we'll be ready for you on Sunday with that 3:25 start. A little earlier this week for you. I'm sure you enjoy that as well. So thanks for the time, and we'll talk to you next Tuesday.
Thanks, guys. This is weird to be putting my clothes back on at the end of an interview. Usually I'm doing the exact opposite right now.
Yeah, it's better doing them naked, isn't it? Don't you feel the freedom?
Just stay naked.
There you go, Mac. That's a clip from Bob just from me to you. That's all of us working together. Cut that for me next week, please, Mac.
You got it, brother.